Hi, folks. Welcome to 3Degrees Discussions, a podcast focused on the details of manufacturing with 3D printing. My name is Mike Vasquez. Today's episode, we have Dr. Federico Sciammarella. He is the president and CTO of MXD, a research and innovation facility here in Chicago. And before we get into the interview, I wanted to just briefly introduce the podcast. This is our first episode, and share a little bit of background on why I decided to start this platform for discussions around the industry. So it's actually kind of interesting and funny in some ways. So this is my second go at a podcast. So about 10 years ago, a good friend of mine named Henry Hansen and I founded a podcast called the Sports Technology Podcast. And at the time, I was a student along with Henry at Loughborough University in the UK studying additive manufacturing and how to apply that in the materials development realm, and had a passion on the side for sports and being athletic and running marathons and like baseball and all things kind of the geeky side of sports. And we wanted to see if we could have a way to talk to some of the cool people around the industry and hear about what they were doing as it came to applying engineering and technology in the sports space. So we founded that podcast, and as things go, we got very busy. We built it to a nice size, about 80 episodes, about 10,000 people were listening on a regular basis, and we're really proud of where it came. And kind of as things go, we decided to kind of shelve it for a time being. There's talks of bringing it back, but kind of in that 10 years, I've really transitioned over to the 3D printing side of things, kind of full force, and started a company about going on 8 years ago called 3Degrees, hence the name of the podcast, and kind of basically with the idea of helping companies implement winning 3D printing solutions through insights and material expertise, and have enjoyed kind of working with a number of people throughout the industry, and hope to have many of them on the show, and other people I've had the fortune of meeting throughout this time, and just discuss all things related to the business of manufacturing, the technology and 3D printing, what's developing, and how people are using it in kind of everyday applications, and just uncover some interesting points and learnings throughout that series of conversation, and so that's the real goal. Hopefully, no real structure to many of the conversations. See where they go, but at the same time, I think kind of given the time that we're living in now, it was one of the reasons that I decided to kind of go online, and do a lot of research on microphones, and kind of get the dust off my editing skills a bit to start a discussion platform was really where kind of I see the industry as this exciting inflection point, where kind of we have this whole kind of COVID epidemic that the world is living with now, and how that's impacted kind of everyday people and businesses, and certainly on the manufacturing side, there's been no shortage of changes and things like that. But you kind of think for 6 months ago, where 3D printing was going, it was really on an upward trajectory, and with new materials, new platforms coming out, more maturing technology, it was really getting exciting to see where everything was taking us. And so kind of jolt in the epidemic and the changes that have occurred and continue to occur with that. I just think it was the right time to build a platform where we can talk about some of those changes, and hear about people's experience kind of leading up to that and through it. And I know as a whole, we'll emerge from this with a lot of lessons learned, and hopefully a lot of improvement, and a lot of exciting things ahead. And so with that, I want to thank you for listening into this first episode. I'm doing this post bedtime, so there'll be no screaming kids around. And many of you who know me or will come to know me on this, we've got kind of two little kids running around, and that's certainly been interesting, kind of navigating a business throughout this time with them running around. So it's quiet for now, and we'll get into the interview with Federico and enjoyed the conversation with him. Thanks for joining me, Federico. I think we met, I don't even know, 6-7 years ago. So at the time you were at Northern Illinois University, just outside the city here, and kind of tell us a little bit about kind of where you got your start in engineering. I know you have a background in materials, but maybe just start there with what you kind of got interested in on that side of things.
Yeah, well, very excited to be here. So thanks for having me, Mike. But really, my interest in materials really started as I was interviewing, or not even interviewing, but going to IIT to see kind of the different engineering programs. My dad was a professor there, and he was in mechanical engineering, so I knew that wasn't an area I wanted to get into.
You didn't want to get into mechanical?
Did not, right. Wanted to avoid my dad at all costs, okay. Right? But no, really, when I saw the materials program, saw, things like welding and being able to break things and not get in trouble for it, it seemed like a great place to invest some of my energy. So I jumped in with both feet and no regrets. It was certainly an interesting time, but had a lot of fun while I was studying. And we weren't a big group, so it was nice because we had a kind of instant like friends, but also study group, and really helped me get through my first 4 years. And then really from there, I took some time to work actually in Argentina for a metallurgical company doing quality control. And while the experience was great, I quickly realized that there was still more for me to learn. And so I got an opportunity to go back and ironically do some research with my dad in his office, and his lab, I should say, and then continued in materials though, and worked with him up until about 2003 when I finished my PhD. So it was a very interesting time to go through that.
Was it always metals focused? Were you, or
it was?
Okay.
Yeah, no, it was mainly metals focused. I did do for my master's thesis, I did do a study of a solid propellant. So it was a polymeric base, but it had some metallic particles for the accelerant. So it was studying the fatigue life on that, and did quite an exhaustive study. But then, yeah, my PhD was on aluminums and aluminum alloys, and again, also doing some in situ process detection and modeling of that behavior. So it was really nice to kind of come full circle in terms of looking at a very in-depth analysis of materials behavior, but then tying it to kind of an application. In this case, for the materials, it was a propellant for rockets, and in the aluminum case, this was looking at thermal forming and things of that nature that were very applicable at the time we were doing the study.
Yeah, I'm always interested about that story of kind of, people say they're materials engineers, material scientists. Kind of, I mean, that's a huge category.
Right.
Of things to encompass. I mean, for me, it was, I really started out a lot on the polymer side. I don't know if it was partly to do with some of the classes I was taking, partly to do with just some of the projects. Was there anything that like specifically drew you to the metal side of things, or I mean, it was a passion for that? Or?
Yeah, I guess it was just, again, like the whole like melting and bending and breaking. I guess you can do that with polymers, but probably, yeah, I think IIT was traditionally more of a metals, although I did take a course in polymers with Dr. Brotman, who had a very successful career in that field. Yeah, I would say the focus was heavily on metals, and so probably that's why the passion for it.
Yeah. Okay. And we met, I think, at the time you had just started or kind of were kind of building the lab at NIU on more
That's right.
some of the 3D printing side of things. I mean, I guess it was part of the materials mechanical department. So kind of what was the dotted line that drew you over to some of the 3D printing stuff?
Yeah, so I, in one sense or another, always looked at any research that I was doing, as I said before, what were the applications behind it. And so basically, with my initial work with my father, it was using lasers to gather information. So stress, strain, fatigue, those kinds of things. And then, slowly got into laser materials processing, so welding. And when I was working for Alliance Science and Technology prior to joining NIU, we had developed an automated laser cladding system. So, I would say it's kind of its early form of metal additive, because we were depositing metal material onto components to repair and refurbish. It wasn't necessarily geared towards developing full parts, but I guess you could have. So really, from that standpoint, my love of metals, and then, kind of adding materials again for refurbishing and repairing or enhancing properties of things is really where that started taking off. And so the work that I was doing at Alliance Science and Technology, we then had transitioned that technology to a company in Rockford, where it's still actually there today being used. Some of that work got transitioned over to Northern. And so once I applied and was accepted into the program, I kind of followed back up into some of that work that I had done previously. And so really then there, we kind of had done some initial work on some additive using a very old lens machine. I believe it was one of the first systems that they had deployed in their containers there in Kuwait for Mobile Parts Hospital. So that's kind of how it all started, really, is just getting some of that older equipment to do some initial work on additive, and particularly in this case in metal additive.
Yeah, so you really built it from scratch.
Yes. Yeah, no, it was exciting. That laser cladding system was all from scratch. It was a 6-axis robotic arm, and yeah, it was super exciting to be a part of that project. I wouldn't say it was really production ready, but we could definitely do some things. And as I said, it's still running today, so I think it speaks to that. Was as I said, probably started in 2002, 2003. So it's been going strong for some time now.
And how did you see, I mean, presumably you had kind of people and students work with you. How did the, I guess, insight, knowledge, even understanding of 3D printing and the industry evolve over that time? I mean, that's a long, like, not super early days of 3D printing in the 80s, but still, like, it's very nascent in the early 2000s. That wasn't something that kind of many people were familiar with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is like today still that some people are still learning about it and kind of liken it to welding, right? Which certainly we have those points. But I'd say what I've been impressed with is how it has kind of been somewhat disseminated throughout the ranks. And I have, I remember students coming to me in my latter years at Northern that had portfolios of, things that they had building, and granted, most of them were polymer based additive, but really excited to get access to a metal printer in my lab and really wanting to learn more, and some which had some knowledge based on maybe some work experience. So it has been very exciting to see that change.
And I can attest to the quality of those students because I've hired several of them to work for
Right.
me in the summer. So
That's right. Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean that's one thing I've certainly been excited about in my time in additive is the fact that more and more some of the design tools, some of even the printing systems and open facilities allow people to kind of at a younger and younger age get acclimated with the technology at different stages. I mean, not everyone has access to a metal printer or laser cladding system or whatever it may be, but the building blocks are there. And I think that's really exciting to me. And now that a number of universities and even elementary schools, high schools have that capability, it's I think the future is pretty exciting for where that goes.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it is very exciting. And I think there are a lot of new things to come. And yeah, just having the students to have exposure to those systems and technologies really just opens up a lot of possibilities for tremendous growth in that area.
For sure. And did you see most of your students coming from mechanical engineering or a lot of different spaces?
No, yeah, no, generally mechanical. Towards the end, I had a couple of students from industrial and systems engineering that were very interested in that, and I was collaborating with a new hire that the industrial and systems engineering program had. That he came actually from Iowa State and had some experience with DED system, lens system. So yeah, no, it mainly stayed there from time to time, just on more side projects, like fun projects. I did have some business students come, some art, music students that wanted to print things on our polymer machines. But generally, the ones that did kind of the hardcore research were from mechanical.
Sure. And one of the things that I always like to, I'm hoping to get more insight as we do more and more of these conversations is for companies as well. I mean, you guys worked with probably dozens, if not more than that, of companies that engage directly with the university and partnered with students and things like that. For how does that work in terms of kind of
yeah, no, absolutely, that's a great question. So I think certainly, as you mentioned, Northern, they have a fairly good connection to the manufacturing community in Northern Illinois, in the region. And so through that network, as I became more familiar with the companies and meeting even former students, as needs or questions arose about, hey, is this something that can be done with 3D printing, and I know you got this a lot, hey, I'd really like to 3D print this part that we manufacture. And so you kind of go through that whole process. Well, is this really the best use of 3D printing, and what are really your goals? And so just kind of having those discussions and really looking at the best way to leverage the technology for them. And so I think once we started building up that trust and the confidence that we were a resource for the region, we started getting a lot more calls and referrals for not just doing research, but also for students, as you said, that people are looking for experience because there's an increasing demand in this space. And so having people that actually know how to use these systems or have done research in these systems, they start becoming very valuable. And so it really was a nice thing to see towards the end there, where a lot of my students were either working for companies related to equipment manufacturers, or that were doing research in that space, and or working for companies that want to develop their capabilities in metal additive.
Right, this full circle where you have you were at the beginning, we're kind of developing technologies, you're teaching students, you're partnering with companies, and they then go on to work at these end users and manufacturers. And I think that's the amazing part for me, for this industry, is that there's so much innovation going on across the country. I mean, across the world as well, but certainly in kind of the U.S. and all over Illinois, all over kind of the Midwest, with companies being innovative with these technologies. You may not hear about it because, I mean, I've been to my fair share of small manufacturing companies, and I mean, they're embroiled in the day-to-day stuff, but they have a lot of smart people, a lot of capable people, and with these new printing systems with metals and polymers, putting those tools in their hands is amazing. And because of NDAs and all, you may not be able to share it so much.
Right.
There's just some amazing stuff happening with kind of starting with people like you that have kind of this kind of planting the seeds early on, building up these lab facilities, teaching students. So it's really been exciting for me to see as you've grown as well. So the kind of next adventure you're on, so you're president and CTO of MXD. So tell us a little bit more about kind of that, which happened late last year, early this year? Kind of
it was November.
I'm
November of last year.
Pre and post COVID now is more
right. Oh gosh, yeah. No, this was pre-COVID. November, but I would say that obviously I probably spent more time outside of the office as a result of it. So it was really interesting. We were on a call with the customer, and one of my colleagues had mentioned how it had been with the company now 7-8 months, and I'm like, really, it's already been that long? So seems like it's been longer, but as you said, given everything that's gone on with COVID, I think it just makes that feel that way. But so MXD is one of 14 of the Manufacturing Innovation Institutes. That was an initiative launched by President Obama back in 2008 when we hit the economic crisis, and he really wanted to do something to have an impact in manufacturing. And so the DoD, the DOE, and DOC, so Department of Defense, Department of Energy, Department of Commerce, they each have their institutes. So Department of Defense has 8 institutes. Department of Commerce or Energy has 5, and the Department of Commerce has 1. So we are in the Department of Defense kind of ecosystem, and our focus really is on manufacturing, digital manufacturing. So hence the name MXD, which is Manufacturing Times Digital. You have the other well-known Manufacturing Innovation Institute talking about Additive is our sister institute, which is America Makes. They were actually one of the first institutes. We were the second institute. We're located here in Chicago, and really our mission is to help manufacturers in the U.S. build. Our tagline is building their parts better than the last. So whatever we can do in that digital thread, so whether it be design, whether it be supply chain, future factory, we are providing some insight into those technologies to help manufacturers produce parts better, more efficiently.
And those are manufacturers of big and small, right?
Correct, right. So we have small, medium manufacturers, small solution providers. Then we have, moving up the chain to your kind of tier 2 and tier 1s. So OEMs and all the like. We're supporting all across that ecosystem. And it's been very exciting time, given everything that's gone on, as you know, with COVID and people understanding actually the importance of having a digital infrastructure and a digital footprint. And a lot of people that were going to go through a digital transformation have accelerated as a result of COVID. And so, the things that we've been preaching since day one, the Institute started about 6 years ago. And I had always kind of been involved in one sense or another with the Institute, just being from Chicago and being passionate about manufacturing. And actually having had a project funded, this was in collaboration with Northwestern, and it actually happened to be on Additive. So really coming full circle and being on this side and providing the resources, so whether it's funding through projects or other opportunities that we get to support our members or technologies that we're disseminating through our projects, We really are doing a lot now and have been very busy again, as I said, with everything going on with COVID.
Yeah. What are some
So
of the
yeah.
accelerations that you've seen in terms of digitizing for manufacturers because of COVID?
Well, certainly there's a huge interest in the supply chain. So really understanding how to get that into a space where you can manage, understand, and even potentially anticipate any disruptions in your supply chain. That's an area that we're focusing on and trying to provide value to our members. The other thing is a couple years ago, we were designated by Department of Defense as the National Center for Cybersecurity in Manufacturing. And that's another area with, even prior to COVID, we were seeing an increase in attacks. As you transform digitally, obviously you're exposing your surface area for attack, right? And certainly with this work from home, now you're working on home networks and potentially more vulnerable than we were prior to COVID. And so really just trying to educate our members and beyond on what are good cyber hygiene practices and how you can avoid potential problems. I think at least a statistic pre-COVID was that 35% of all cyber espionage occurred to manufacturers. And just to put that in perspective, manufacturing in the US, the majority, I'd say over 90%, we're talking about less than 200 employees. And I think 75%, it's less than 50 employees or 20 employees, something like that. So really, you're talking about a large percentage of our attacks happening to these small and medium manufacturers, which may not have the resources to protect themselves. And so really, how do we help and educate those and empower them so that they are able to become secure and still operate in this new environment?
How have you seen manufacturing companies adapt in this environment? Obviously, for many places, they're deemed essential, and so you can't necessarily run a CNC remotely. I mean, in some ways you can, but there are aspects of manufacturing that you need to be in doing things, kind of making things. How have you seen companies adapt to that?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think one of the things that comes to front of mind is really what an outstanding community the manufacturing community is in terms of the amount of calls, even and really unsolicited, of, hey, what can we do to help? As you recall, even with the makers, right, making PPE and wanting to help and having the same from the manufacturers. Hey, we're here to help. What can we do? So just off the bat, that was something to me. While I always kind of knew it, just seeing it firsthand from this side, as being a institute that's membership driven, with almost 300 members, and coming from across the range from small to large, of everyone just wanting to help and pitch in, which was absolutely amazing. From there, really just seeing how resilient many manufacturers are in terms of being able to pivot and do things differently than they were doing. But certainly, that's not easy for everyone, right? And so you really start to see where those that have become kind of agile, and generally your small businesses are that way, right? Because just by nature, they have to pivot and adapt to changing circumstances. While this is certainly one that was for the record books, I could say that many companies had taken this as an opportunity to kind of understand their position and their value and how to potentially further strengthen themselves, right? And so they've done a great job in responding, but certainly there's a long road ahead of us, and as I said, as an institute, we're going to try to support them as much as possible.
Has it, for the institute itself, have you has COVID revealed any new insights or focus areas that may not have been top of mind before this all happened? I mean, cybersecurity kind of probably really highlighted things, but are there other Are there areas that like, hey, like we should really start thinking about this, or we're getting a lot of more questions on
Right.
these topics?
Yeah, I mean, nothing that really jumps out other than the things that we already knew, like I mentioned, supply chain or other areas like modernization, and not necessarily updating equipment to very expensive pieces, but even simple solutions where you have like say a digital camera connected to an analog gauge to give you a reading, right? So just basic steps like that. But really, I would say one of the takeaways from all of this was especially ourselves as an institute, how efficient people were working remotely, and understanding the capacity that not only for the day jobs that all my employees had, but also all the COVID response that they were responding to, and how that kind of came, on top of the day job, and how hard and committed people were to working to resolve these issues and to come up with solutions for members, or with certain project calls or opportunities. And I would say the same of the manufacturers themselves, that those that could respond responded very well and efficiently, even though maybe a large portion of their team was working remotely. And then obviously, as you said, with the operations, how those people were still going in and running operations, maybe not fully staffed, but enough to get things going and operational. It has been impressive to see that resiliency.
Right. I think for many of the conversations we've had, it's been a good inflection point for a lot of people have been either members of MXD or just thinking about some of these topics for their own company. There's always something else that takes priority in many cases, like getting the next product out the door, fixing a machine, things like that. But when you have big turning points like this, it tends to refocus some of that effort or longer term thinking that you may have been kind of scratching through or have a couple of meetings about. But it's, for me, I've seen some of the COVID situation really accelerate thinking and making people move and do move into action for digitization or security for cyber and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So excellent. So kind of looking out as we kind of knock on wood, kind of things at least have settled into some sort of a little bit of an equilibrium. Kind of what's on kind of your docket in the coming months and years to continue to support kind of manufacturers through MXD? Are there things that you're really excited about?
As you pointed out, certainly people understand the need to create a digital transformation plan, and this is something we've always been kind of talking about at the Institute, but we are really focused on this, what we're calling this National Digital Transformation Initiative. So what is it that we can do to assist people in that transformation process? As I mentioned, supply chain is a really big part of that. There are a lot of projects. We've had over 63 projects since our start, over $90 million of funding. And so looking at all those pieces that we've already had in terms of securing the supply chain, making it more resilient, more agile, ensuring that people have the right digital technologies and can track performance of systems and machines and suppliers. These are all things that we feel we've been doing and can provide a helping hand. And I would say the overall picture is really bright as well, because I think all the manufacturing institutes have been having this kind of similar response, albeit all in their different sectors. And so we've initiated this conversation on a national manufacturing guard, where we have the institutes and its members providing a role to support, so that in future pandemics or future crises, we actually have a workforce that is trained to respond to these, right? And so that's something that I think is very exciting in its early stages here in terms of discussion and looking for support from the government, and I think there has been some initial interest and support in this idea. And so really, as we move forward, it's how do we support this transformation process? How do we ensure that the value that we as an institute have can be amplified outside of our initial focus in terms of, certainly we want to help our members, but as we transition, right, we need to think broadly across the supply chain, because certainly as it relates to cybersecurity, you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? And so while everyone may not have the resources or bandwidth, we do have to educate and make them understand even taking some simple steps can go a long way, right? Again, not having to invest in lots of technology or certifications, but really just some basic things to help provide some initial support. So it's very exciting to see where we're going to go. I think certainly with AI and machine learning, certainly with 5G, we have a 5G testbed that should be up and running by the end of this month with AT&T. So applying that on the manufacturing floor, I think will also lend itself to some really incredible breakthroughs, especially as we're trying to understand this remote workforce and potential hybrid approach that maybe with these new technologies like 5G, that becomes a lot more realistic and possible than with current systems. So I think all of these things are on the table, and certainly areas that we feel we can provide a good sense of direction to with our members, and hopefully coming up with these great solutions to help American manufacturing.
Awesome. I mean, you guys are doing some great work, and I think even as this continues, there'll be more and more opportunities to have conversations with different manufacturing organizations. I think the one thing I really like, not only you guys, but all of the manufacturing institutes, it allows kind of that dialogue between different groups, different organizations, different companies, the government, all to come together and talk about manufacturing, and a situation like this even magnifies it, where everyone's talking about the same thing. Like, you can't go 10 minutes without talking about COVID related things, and I think everyone with their different perspectives can come at it in a different way, and I think it'll lead to a lot of interesting innovations, a lot of interesting problem set or problem solutions to in the coming years and months. So Federico, I appreciate the time today. If people want to find out more, I think the website is mxdusa.com. So if
.org.
.org. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
So mxdusa.org. So if there's anywhere else that they should point out, or any events that we should keep on our calendars as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We like most with everything that's been going on, we have a lot of content online now, past webinars, some of them which are free, some of them you get access to as a member. I would say just, and you know this very well, Mike, membership for MXD is fairly reasonable, specifically if you're a small business. It's $500 for the year. And this is something that we feel is a tremendous value, because you're getting a lot of content, a lot of information. We're actually launching a program that we're actually in 2 days we'll get responses to a program that we launched, project to support the digital transformation for SMM. So we're very excited to see what proposals come of that, and this will be again kind of like a playbook in some area of digital transformation that would then be rolled out to our tier 3 members, our small manufacturing solution providers, and also manufacturers, how to implement these with a kind of directed ROI tool. So should be very exciting, and yeah, definitely webinars and other features on our website that are available. So would definitely encourage people to check those out.
For sure. Awesome, Federico. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate it.